Welcome to Shop Talk Live, Fine Woodworking Magazine's bi-weekly podcast. I'm your host and Fine Woodworking editor, Tom McKenna, and with me this episode, our special projects editor, Matt Kenny.
Hello.
And Ben Strano, our web producer.
Hello.
Mike Pekovich is on vacation, or so he says. Today we also have a special guest, Garrett Hack, our longtime contributing editor, will be joining us later in the podcast, so stay tuned. Before we get started, I need to take care of some business. Don't forget to visit finewoodworking.com to hear... Don't forget to visit finewoodworking.com to keep up with the tool giveaway for our 40th anniversary. The current prize is a DMT sharpening kit. To win it, you must enter by Monday, May 16th. To enter, go to finewoodworking.com/40sweeps. That's the number. Again, it's finewoodworking.com/40sweeps. Also, remember to send your questions and comments to shoptalk@taunton.com. It's your questions that kind of keep our witty bantering. Before we get to some, I'm sorry, what?
I was going to say that the prizes we've been giving away have been really awesome. But all the people that have won prizes so far, which I believe excludes them from winning other prizes, perhaps, are going to be really mad when we get to the last prize and they realize it's $250 million.
Well,
maybe I shouldn't have given that away.
No, it was a top secret prize.
Well, I guess I'm going to get fired.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, make some people happy.
Hey, before we get to some questions in reality, by the way, that was a joke about the millions of dollars.
And me getting fired, right?
Yeah.
One of them was a joke.
Well, one of them was a joke. Ben had something he wanted to kind of talk to folks about regarding our website and some happenings that are pretty exciting.
Serious.
Yeah,
I'm a very serious
what's
person.
happening on the
Listeners of
website?
Shop Talk Live.
It's Tuesday on the web. What's up, Ben?
Friday.
It's Friday?
Friday when we release it.
Hello. It's Friday on the web.
Friday. Well, there was just you would ask me if there was anything I wanted to tell people about, and it's that every other week I've been uploading a Masters of the Craft video from the archive. And I didn't know, I used to go to the finewoodworking.com website all the time. I read the magazine, and I didn't know about the Masters of the Craft slideshow video thing until Mike mentioned it on this podcast. And I started watching them, and they're phenomenal. And unfortunately, some of the technology that they were done with is kind of difficult to watch.
Phonographs.
Yeah.
Horse and buggy.
Yeah, it's cylinder, wax cylinder recordings. But so we've been converting them over to HD video and making sure that the pictures are all high quality and high res and everything. I've been denoising everything and uploading them to YouTube. So this way they're shareable and they're just getting more eyeballs on them. So I just want to let everyone know about the Masters of the Craft series. It's a phenomenal series.
Every other week, right?
Every other week, yeah.
And that the alternating weeks in between are old episodes of Thundercats, right?
Yes.
Thunder.
And He-Man.
Masters of the Universe.
I am the power. Hey, how do people find those?
I always post a blog post on the website linking back to them, and you can find them on our YouTube channel, which is Fine Woodworking Magazine. I don't know
what our YouTube channel is.
Yeah,
and
if you search Fine Woodworking, you'll
you could just Google
We'll
Masters of the Craft.
Maybe
It might work.
we'll see what happens now.
Yeah, and it pulls up some lovely Russian sites.
We're not in any hurry, though. Let's get on to some questions. The first one is from David, and David asks, why is the front vise located on the left side of the workbench? Before I knew any better, I placed my vise in the center of the bench and find it very convenient. Am I missing something?
Well, it's on the left-hand side of the bench because normal people are right-handed.
Normal people. Yeah.
Those that we care about.
Well, that's why
Including my
it's on
wife.
the left-hand end of a bench, because if you're right-handed in your hand planing, the natural position for you to stand in is orient your body such that
The dominant hand.
therefore, hitherto
And henceforth,
the bench vise should be on the left-hand side. If you're left-handed, you'd want it on the right end. That's why it's on the left end of the bench.
Yes.
I wonder if he finds it convenient because it's a vise. And a vise is convenient, but it would probably be more convenient to him on the left-hand side of the bench.
Oh, because it's in the middle of the bench. Yeah, I guess if he likes it in the middle of the bench, there's no reason not to do that. It would decrease the length of board that you could hand plane while it was in the vise, say on edge. Because I guess you could support it, clamp it in the middle of the board, and have some hanging out the front and the back of the vise.
Yeah.
I guess. But then instead of supporting it just in the other end with at the off end with say a knocky in,
knocky.
a hold fast,
Knocky.
you would have to have one of those at both ends and then the vise in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, another benefit of having the vise at the end is if you're doing dovetail work, you can get around the corner and kind of get into different angles. But if it's in the center of the bench, you're going to have a bit of a harder time kind of getting your eyeball and where you're pairing.
Or working with spoke shave, or
right.
Come around the end of the bench a lot.
Yeah, to come around the end of the bench is nice. But also, and I'm serious about this, but it's going to sound funny, is that having a vise in the middle of the bench, to me, seems like there would be a greater chance of you getting knocked, by the vise. Because that happens. I hit my knees on it, vise handles, and, you hit your hips on it, and having it in the middle of the bench, I think because that's...
Also, you can hit your head, too.
I mean, to me, it also depends how long your bench is. If you have, a 4-foot bench, it kind of doesn't matter where it is. But if you have a 10-foot bench, it also doesn't matter because you've got plenty of room on either side to work. Yeah. But on the bench in the shop, which is 7-8 feet, I'm always working right in the middle, so I'm surrounded, and I think that you wouldn't be able to work in the middle without getting knocky.
You don't want to get knocky.
No.
Yeah, you could not. I mean, if you have I have a 7-foot bench, I think, or 8-foot bench, and I would not want the vise in the middle because it would be eating up all that real estate right in the middle of the bench. Yeah. And so you would have to be working on either side of it, and that means, in a way, walking, having to step around it all the time.
Yeah. And pushing it closed.
So
unless your bench was freestanding, not up against a wall or anything, then you're just working on the other side. Most of the time, when you need a vise, you walk to the other side of the bench, and there you go.
I think the vise could also get in the way of clamping, just general work if you're doing a glue up at the bench.
But this guy likes it at the end. So
then if he's happy,
rock on, David.
Yeah, I don't think he's missing anything. Keep on keeping on, and
10 years from now, everyone might be putting it right in the middle, and he'll be the father.
But he is wrong. It should be on the left hand.
If you should be ashamed of himself.
If you do keep it in the middle, just wear a cup while you work.
Right.
So
just don't tell anyone.
But we did answer it. It's because you're right. If you're right-handed, left end. Yeah.
Excellent.
All right.
Then you have to pick boards that are right or left-handed as well. So
that's right. Don't forget to get your chisels correctly handed.
Yes. All right. Let's move on to question number 2. This one comes from Randy. And Randy says, I am making a storm door for a customer. I picked up a bunch of 5/4 sawn white oak and picked the straightest pieces there were. I ran the pieces over my joiner to flatten them. Then I planed them to a consistent 1 1/8 inches thick. He flipped them and then took another light 1/8 inch from the other side. Immediately a piece took on a 1/4 inch to 3/8 inch bow over 7 feet. One of my door styles remained straight, but after creating a bow in 2 separate pieces, I'm stumped and don't want to keep wasting material. So my question is, can I straighten material by using steam? Have you ever heard of anyone doing this? I haven't.
I've not heard of anyone doing it. It doesn't mean that someone hasn't done it.
Someone's done it.
That person probably died in an explosion while doing it.
Or got burned really badly.
No, but actually, I mean, I wouldn't recommend trying to steam it, but he's not far off on a possible solution, which works for like panels. All right, and that is, you can do this a couple of different ways. One way that Chris Bexford talked about in a Q&A many years ago was to take the panel outdoors in the morning when the grass is wet. put the concave side down on the grass, because that's the side that's the driest, and leave the convex side up towards the sun. And the combination of the wet grass plus the drying heat of the sun will, in fact, flatten the board back out. I've done it myself, and
like a 3/4 inch panel.
Yes.
No, I know it's no joke.
Yes.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, on a panel, a little work on a panel, absolutely. So, and also you can do things like spray water on the concave side of a board, and that may help relax that side or stretch it back out, so to expand it so that the board straightens back out.
Now I've done that, and it does take a while though, because I sprayed water on it, waited a few days, and nothing happened. Made the panel up again, and about a month later, all of a sudden I look and that original panel was straight.
Well, yeah, if you, I mean, a panel or a board might cup or bow today. And if you leave it sitting around for a month or 2 months, just on its own, it could straighten back out. And that's just simply due to changes in relative humidity.
Yeah.
You know?
One thing that when we had our pre-production meeting, we talked a little bit about helping Randy kind of diagnose what he did here. And it sounds like maybe he didn't let the material acclimate to his shop enough. And, typically when you're milling up material, you want to, get it basically flat and square, let it rest, let the maybe dry out a little bit more, acclimate more, and take lighter passes. And you have to let the material rest and keep the moisture content, or let the material reach equilibrium moisture content, however you want to get that detailed. But
yeah, and I think that in order to do that best, he probably should have started with 6/4 material instead of 5/4, because there's more material there to allow it to move over a series of milling sessions.
Right.
I did think of another solution which I believe will work. Two things that I'm fairly certain will work here, because 7 feet is fairly long.
Yeah.
And and
a narrow piece.
And it's 1 inch thick. We're not sure how narrow it is. It's probably like 2.5, 3 inches wide.
It's a storm door style. So
yeah. So one thing will be that he has one straight style and one bowed style. So the bowed style should go on the hinge side of the door. And your door, like most entryway doors, would probably have 3 hinges. And the third hinge, when you attach it to the door and then attach it to the jamb, should straighten things out. So those 3 hinges will pull that door flat, that style, force it flat and keep it flat. The other thing that might work, and all of this is worth trying, is you should be able to run your groove in that style easily, because it's so long. You should be able to push that and keep it flat against your table saw fence when you use a dado set to groove it. And then when you put your panel in, and we don't know what kind of panel. It's probably a glass panel because it's
or screen.
Yeah, it could be screen, but
not a storm door.
Okay.
Yeah, storm door would be glass. And, if you're using like a 3/4 inch thick glass plate, that'll keep the style flat. Yeah, I don't know.
What you have to do is get granite.
Granites, yeah. I would get, but actually the glass, I'm thinking now that it's a glass panel probably is not, well, I wouldn't rely on that. But a 1/4 inch glass plate, I don't know how thick the glass is for a storm door, so probably not very thick.
Well, it should be tempered.
Yes.
So, but I mean, 1/8 inch glass, which is what most people are going to put in there.
It's not going to keep it.
Snap.
I think the hinges will. And he says he has 2 styles that are both bowed, because he made one at bowed, made another one and it bowed. Use one of those and test out the hinge theory. I think it'll work.
Yeah.
I know
The hinge theory will work.
cabinet makers that do that with cabinet doors, when they put the wonky one on the hinge side and the hinges keep it tame.
Yeah. Yeah, and just remember, like Matt was talking about, milling the groove, it helps to use a featherboard to keep that piece flat against your table or the fence.
Mm-hmm.
So, we all done with screen door hardware questions?
Move along, Randy.
Now it's time.
Wait a minute. Mike just called in. He said 1/4 sawn white oak. He needs to put some proud dovetails on it.
Maybe the blue tape will help.
He said blue tape would definitely help.
Put it in the toaster.
And you're not posting to Instagram nearly enough.
Yeah, the
we're
blue
kidding,
tape.
Mike. We're kidding.
I'm not.
Now it's time for our all-time favorite tools of all time for this week.
All right. You guys have tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
All-time favorite tool of all time this week?
Yeah.
Mine's Ed Pernick. No. Who's going to start?
I think we should let Ben go first,
right.
since he's
He's the fresh
you
meat.
know. And
I had mine too far away. All right. And I will mute that later.
That's huge, man. Get that off the table.
My all-time favorite tool of all time for this week is my new to me Lee Valley Veritas jack plane. Bevel up.
Low angle jack.
Yep. And it has been one of those tools that I've yearned after forever. And I was talking to Dylan about it. He goes, "Oh, why have you wanted that so bad?" I just, when you're a kid, you decide that you like Porsches and you want a Porsche or you whatever. It's like when I started woodworking, I wanted this plane. And I had an opportunity to get one at a good price, and here it is. And it's proven to be incredibly useful. I don't use it for smoothing, just because it's too long. But everything else I've been doing with it in the shop, it's just incredibly capable at. You can open up the mouth easily. You can, to take a heavier cut, you can close it up to take a lighter cut, and it's done everything I've asked of it. And we have at the shop the Lee Nielsen version.
Yes.
Which is another phenomenal plane, but it just wasn't as comfortable in my hand. So this one felt right to me, and I love it.
Yeah, I own that plane. I bought it not long after I started working here, and I used it exclusively, more or less for shooting boards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great for that. But it also works great for like trimming ingrain on a tabletop, or cleaning up ingrain on a tabletop before you apply the finish. Things like that. It's a really nice plane. I really like it a lot.
And this is the PMV 211.
The
Fancy.
Yeah. So I'm excited to give it a thorough thrashing and see how easy it is to sharpen.
You can start planing some Formica. That'll test it.
Or some granite.
Yes. Some
Take it
lovely
for granted.
You guys are terrible.
Come on.
All right.
MDF.
So cool. So you just got that like in the last week or two, right?
2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
Have you
Very nice.
done any sharpening on the blade yet?
I have not. It was fairly sharp when I got it, and it has not needed
What?
addressing yet.
What? You haven't sharpened your own plane yet?
No, I haven't.
It was this amateur
I actually
night.
haven't even used it. I've just looked at it. Just sat there and like, wow, that's really nice looking. I'm just going to mess it up.
That's handsome. Yeah. Interesting.
It doesn't work for editing video.
We should point out, though, that the blade was sharpened by somebody else
Yes.
during a review,
Yes.
and you purchased the plane.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So it has been tuned.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's been gone over and tuned up, and it's all downhill from here for it.
Oh, I'm sure you'll learn to sharpen, or if you haven't already, right?
No, I've been doing all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just haven't sharpened this one.
Excellent.
All right. Do you want to step up, Matt?
Sure, I can go next. My
Careful.
all-time favorite tool of all time this week is a saw blade. Wow. And this is a Freud Diablo.
Red.
It is a 7 1/4 inch circular saw blade with 40 teeth,
60
teeth, which is a lot of teeth for such a small diameter blade, right? It's probably comparable to something at least 80 tooth on a 10-inch blade, if not more. It's the ultra finish, and yet somehow it's ideal for wet lumber. I'm not buying that. But it's a finished blade and ideal for wet lumber. But I bought this, and I bought it because I was going to try out a Will Neptune trick, and I still am, where you pop off every other blade tooth, and then you can angle it over and use it to cut dovetails. And I'm still going to do that. But in the meantime, what I've been using it for is just a little super thin kerf blade, and to do cross cuts. And because it's 60 tooth, it's a really fine cross cut, but also it rips pretty well. So I've been using it to make, when I needed a really fine rip, I've been using it for that. And because it's a 5/8 inch arbor, it will fit on your table saw. And the cool thing is it's super quiet because it's
so small.
Yeah, because the diameter is so little that it's not.
Yeah.
How much depth do you get out of it on your table saw?
Enough.
Okay.
I mean, you're not going to be ripping 12-quarter maple with it, but for anything I'd be doing with it, it'd be small, thin
baby
stuff.
cuts.
Yeah,
Baby
little
cuts.
baby cuts
Baby
for
cuts.
little baby furniture.
It's funny. I used the.
You said it. I didn't say it.
So it works great it's fantastic. What's really nice is the super thin kerf is what's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a 20-volt cordless circ saw, and I use that same blade, and it works great.
Plus
for
they're cheap.
all sorts of cuts.
It's about $15, which
Yeah.
kind of expensive for a circ saw blade, but for something that you can actually use for fine woodworking.
Yeah, but it's funny.
Registered trademark of the
Matt-
Taunton Press. You can. It's not a bad price.
Yeah, Matt mentioned the quiet aspect of it. Circ saws are noticeably pretty loud.
Yeah, but it's not the blade.
It's not the blade. But no, in this case, it was. It seemed. I don't know. If, I had never used this before until a few weeks ago. But it was relatively quiet, and I think the thin kerf helps the battery power. It just was a pretty nice little tool. I really didn't expect this saw to be able to do what it did. I mean, I was trimming doors with it.
Is it 7 1/4 really? Because battery power is normally 5 1/4 or 6 1/2.
I wasn't done yet. Have we all of a sudden just sort of
When is that
slid into somebody else's tool of the week?
Sure.
Whatever.
Finish it up, dude.
Man, Pekovic isn't here and chaos reigns. No, actually, I was done.
Okay. Well, let's.
All about you.
I'm using it in my table saw, though. That's what I'm pointing out here.
That's the fancy
The
part.
table saw. It's nice.
That blade looks unused, actually.
It has been used, but you can also see I started to mark it so that I could knock off every other tooth.
How are you going to get the teeth off?
Yeah.
Well,
how does Will do it?
so you can pull them off with pliers, like wickety wiki.
Are you going to duck the first time you turn it on in a saw?
No, because Will Neptune does it, and if Will Neptune does it, it's got to be safe.
He,
Right?
he has only one eye, though. I'm kidding. Will does
He
not
doesn't have any.
He has both eyes.
And Mike has. Well, I don't think Mike's used this blade. He's made a blade, but he hasn't used it yet. He's still afraid to use it, I think.
I would just take Mike's.
Yeah.
Where's Dylan?
Well, Dylan suggested getting a Dremel and just cutting through just behind the tooth. But you can just pop them off with pliers. So
What's the angle on it, though?
this actually is crazy. So I got home, and what I did was tilted it in the direction that my saw tilts until those teeth were flat,
Yeah.
you know, and I cut a kerf through a board, and I put a marking gauge on, a bevel gauge on it, set it. It is the exact same angle that I use for dovetails
There's no way.
in most of the thin, in all the thin stuff that I do, which is a more of a flared out tail than you can get away with in thick stuff.
It's like a 1 to 7-ish.
No, it kills me to say this, but it's actually, I believe, about 14 degrees.
Okay.
Which 14 degrees is the angle that is used, I believe, on all or most router bit dovetail router bits.
So you're ashamed.
Because it looks like router bit dovetails, but they don't.
They don't.
No, because the layout and everything I use is clearly not machine done.
Although now everyone knows it is.
Well, I once tried
Or
to
our
cut
most
dovetail.
popular video on YouTube, which is you cutting table saw dovetails.
Yeah, I once tried to cut dovetails by hand, but it turns out that wood was much harder than my skin and bones, and so my hands were all bloody, and I had a couple of broken fingers.
A couple splinters.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my all-time favorite tool of all time for this week is actually not what you consider really a woodworking tool, but
All right, Pekovic.
it's no, but it's related. It's graph paper, and I have a hard time drawing in perspective. And one of the things that graph paper really helps me out with is, I can use it as a sketchbook, but it also helps me once I get the dimensions kind of set out, I can start drawing lines off, perspective lines and be pretty close to accurate. It's a crutch, but I need it. And the only thing that's bad about it is I have not found, Matt and Mike have these really cool sketchbooks that they carry around, and it kind of keeps a record of what they're doing. With the graph paper pads that I have, they just keep falling apart, so I have to put all the sheets in a folder, which
Moleskin
kind of is a
makes
bummer.
them now.
What's that?
Moleskin.
Oh, Moleskin.
Yeah,
The paper's kind of junk, but
yeah. I've used moleskins forever because I'm cool.
Yeah. Before they were cool.
I had moleskins and space. I always use a space pen, but
Space pen. Upside down.
But a moleskin I don't think I would use for a sketchbook, mostly because it's hard to lay flat unless they make one with like a spiral back or something like that. That would. I don't know. But I would go somewhere. You live close enough. You should go to Jerry's Artorama in New Britain, Connecticut. And they have tons
Real name.
It is the place. Yeah, Jerry's Artorama. Or like Dick Blick, which is also close to you. And you would probably find a suitable graph paper pad that you could use for a sketch pad.
Yeah, like a spiral bound. But
no, you can get them. You can go take them to a printer and get it spiral bound.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. No, it also helps, in terms of scale and things like that. So, in addition to, I'm building this cabinet on stand, and so I had, the base is all glued up, so I was able to draw that to scale and then start sketching different box orientations or layouts on top of that base and keep it all the same size. I know it's a crutch, but it really is. It's quite helpful.
If that's the worst
for me.
of your crutches,
It's
no,
not.
it's not.
No.
Oh, okay.
It's just one of many.
Whiskey. I saw you were doing that on Instagram. I had not said anything to you yet. I was going to query you about making the base first before designing the cabinet.
Yeah. That's interesting. I had
Getting a patented Matt Kenny debriefing.
I had a sense of scale with this piece. I had a sense of scale of what I wanted. I knew the height that I wanted, and it just worked out that way. That I couldn't figure out the top portion, and so I thought, instead of stalling myself, I wanted to keep working. And so I built the base. Mm-hmm. I knew the base is kind of what I wanted. It's kind of the secondary aspect of the overall design. And now I'm just trying to make the top to fit to it.
Yeah. No, I'm not criticizing you for doing it. I've used in the past, I've done things like that. But I've been trying to, especially in the last year, I tried every time.
To make a lot of boxes.
To completely design something before I started to make it, because that I found that more beneficial over the long run, that you're not trying to make decisions as you're building. You already know everything you have to do. And so you just boom, 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 do it. And then you design something and boom, 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 do it. And anyways, it's a conversation for off air.
No, it's good. I mean, it's how, people work different ways. And like I said, I had these sketches made up, and I couldn't make up my mind about, everything at once. And so I just wanted to move along. And so I made the base. And, one of the questions, it's funny when we've done these projects, these Krenov style cabinet on stands before. And the running joke was, well, what comes first, the stand or the top? And I opted for the base first.
And now you don't have to make the top flush with the dimensions of the base.
No, I don't want to. I don't want it to be, I want it to either be inset or overlay.
It should overhang by at least a foot on all four sides.
Well, that's my goal. And I'm going to use Baltic birch.
Hey, it can look nice.
And drywall screws.
And red oak.
Red oak. All right. Well, let's get back to some questions, shall we?
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
Now, this one comes from Will in Colebrook, Connecticut. I don't even know where that is. But he says,
made up place.
My question involves a jet super saw, a hybrid that I inherited a few years ago. It has a single miter slot to the right of the blade and a narrow sliding table on the left side. I'd like to build a super precise table saw crosscut sled based on a blog by Matt. In that blog, Matt says that one miter slot is all that's needed, but will it work with the right slot? And then one more addendum. Also, I'm missing a few parts from the miter gauge that fits the slider, and I'm wondering if it's worth trying to track down substitutes. So maybe Matt can address the first question.
I can. Because my sleds all he's talking about when I have it. He's got to be talking about when it's angled over to cut miters. And because then when it is angled, my saw is angled over to cut miters, the sled is on the left-hand side. Wait a minute. Now I'm confused. It has a single miter slot to the right of the blade. I like to based on that, and that what Matt says the right slot. The problem is his saw is a left tilt saw. My saw is a right tilt saw. And so, yeah, the sled will work for your saw. You just have to basically make a mirror copy of my sled because, and then it will work with your saw. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, I kind of question the need for him to make a sled.
I was just thinking that, he's got the sliding table.
Because he has a sliding table,
I mean, Jet's still around. It's not like they don't have parts.
Yes, sure it's definitely worth finding the parts for that miter gauge that's built into the sliding table because you want to be able to use the sliding table. If I remember correctly, this saw is DeWalt and Jet came out with saws around the same time, and it might have been as early as like around 2000, sometime around then.
I'm thinking even before that, like 99, 98 maybe.
Yeah, they were, it was around that. It was sometime around 2000, maybe give or take a couple of years. But it doesn't really matter. Let's talk about it for another 15 minutes, though. They were both sort of the same concept. They were, I'm not sure exactly if they were contractor saws internally, like their mechanisms, but they were a small contractor saw type saw with a base that was sort of like a cabinet, but the cabinet only came down halfway, and then they had legs beneath that. And they both had, if I remember correctly, true sliding tables, and that the table was right up to the blade.
The pictures I looked at after our little meeting, they were not right up against the blade.
They were not?
No.
They were only like wings that slid.
Yeah, and I would say you probably had 3 or 4 inches before the sliding table.
Oh, well, that's much better than a normal wing that slides where you have like 10 to 15 inches. So it was somewhere between like an add-on sliding table and a true sliding table saw. Yeah. And they both made them, and they stopped making them because I was going to get one of them because I thought that was really cool. Mm-hmm. And definitely, if you can get the parts for that miter gauge on the sliding table, do that.
Yeah, I'd contact Jet.
Yeah, and then you don't need a sled. You don't need that. You should be able to set that.
Matt's sled.
I know that Matt guy's a loser. Yeah, what does he know?
More like kind of precise.
Approximately precise.
Close enough for boxes.
I did not name that blog.
No.
Pernick did.
Oh.
Pernick.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to. Actually, the other question he had about the parts.
We said
he's missing a few parts. Yeah, it's certainly worth reaching out to Jet and see if you can get them. Now, the next question comes from Charlotte from Brooklyn, and she, Charlotte has quite a few questions about sharpening, and she writes, "I've been flattening the backs of some new chisels using wet or dry sandpaper, 150, 400, 1000, 1500 grit on a piece of glass. Then I polish with 4000 and 8000 grit water stones." So she has 3 follow-up questions, and the first is there any benefit to switching scratch patterns when you switch grits? And the reason she asks is that she's comfortable working in one direction, but she wonders whether she's doing something wrong by working in that way.
Yes, she is.
You ruined it.
No, do whatever's comfortable. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good lesson as you're starting out. I know I was following Chris Gochner's method on flattening backs, where you do change direction between grits, and it is I don't want to call it a crutch, but it's a good way to really help you identify the scratch patterns that you're trying to eliminate pretty easily.
I mean, when you change directions, are you like changing 90 degrees?
Yeah.
I mean, because I just tilt it maybe 10 or 15 degrees to change directions.
Wait, I mean, you just said you've never sharpened anything. That's why your plane's still dull.
Yeah. I just sent it to Mike.
You sent it to Mike. Yeah, even a small change in the angle at which you're sharpening would create that different grain pattern that you could then observe to know when you've polished, when you've reached the end of the grit, the next grit.
So my argument is, it's like, how difficult is it to just cant it just a little bit? It's not going to make you
not. Well, I actually stopped doing the redirecting, and Mike kind of told me to stop it. So
I did.
No, it was he
knock it off.
He had some good reasons for it, and part of it is stoneware and ease, and learning a lot from Mike. When I first started doing it, I was really gorillaing down on the blade, and so I was really scratching it. And so he said, take a lighter touch, and you just keep on. I work in the same direction now, and it's pretty easy to see the scratch pattern disappear.
Yeah, so you can work always in the same pattern, and if it's diagonal, she says she likes to hold it diagonal, hold it diagonal.
And if it's working, if you're comfortable, then keep on keeping on. The next question she has that's related.
But
she said, what?
We have?
No, she has
two more questions.
I'm getting it. Don't interrupt me, man.
Yes, sir, boss, sir.
Getting Lypernic. She says, I'm using glass cleaner as a lapping fluid because it's cheap and smells decent. I've seen videos where people used WD-40, and then she says, is lapping fluid really important, and what are your thoughts on alternatives? Yes, it's important because it keeps the sandpaper from getting clogged with swarf.
Yeah, only with wet, dry sandpaper. At the coarser grits, you don't need to use it. Like 400, you don't need it.
Yeah.
But when you get above that, you do. Yeah. It smells good, I guess.
Good.
I don't know. I don't think Windex smells very good.
I don't enjoy that smell of
I
ammonia.
think Windex smells good. I also think WD-40 smells good, though. So my answer is...
You're a sick person.
You have problems. But you
usually just use water.
You could use water. Yeah, absolutely. You could use, some people like to use kerosene, which is crazy.
That's fun.
Yeah, that's not smart. They use that mostly on oil stones, though, but it's for the same reason. Yeah. Water, mineral spirits. I use mineral spirits when I'm sanding, wet, dry sanding. I imagine you could also use it here. Mm-hmm. They don't flash off too quickly.
Yep.
So you could use, Lagavulin Scotch whiskey if you wanted to. It's got to be a liquid.
No, that's a waste.
I'm just saying,
No, I mean,
Jeff didn't like that one.
If you do use water, you just want to make sure you make sure it's dry after you're finished.
Yeah, dry it thoroughly. Yeah.
Now, finally, from Charlotte, she says that she has some errant scratch marks from the 150 grit paper, but the rest of the back is mirror polished. No matter how hard I try on the 400, these few scratches from the 150 do not come out. Are the scratches a big deal? And we talked about this earlier as well. And I'll let Matt go ahead and give his opinion.
Yes. Oh, I can't give the answer. I just can only give my opinion. They're not a big deal. No. Scratches at the cutting edge of a blade, whether it's chisel or a plane blade, are a lot like nicks in a joiner or planer knife. A nick in those knives will leave a high ridge running down the board. And a little scratch pattern at the edge of your blade, planer chisel blade, is the exact same thing. It's a nick. Yeah. And they will also leave little tracks. And so use your plane blade, and if you don't really see giant tracks, then don't worry about it. But if you do see tracks, obvious tracks, then you will need to go back and polish it better. I mean, the problem is that the scratch, I should clarify, the scratch isn't just on the back. The scratch will almost certainly runs all the way across the back and to the cutting edge. If it's parallel to the cutting edge. If it's perpendicular to the cutting edge, forget about it. Who cares?
Not gonna make a difference.
Yeah, but if it's parallel, then it's definitely going to reach to the cutting edge, and you may need to get rid of it, depending on the surface that's left by the tool.
Right. And we also, her question was pretty long and gave us a lot of background, but I think we all agreed that 150 was a pretty brutal starting point for flattening.
Probably unnecessary.
Unless it's really really beat up. But the other point that we had talked about earlier was that when you're flattening, make sure you go through the grits in progression and not skip, because that's going to make it easier to remove the scratches from the more coarse grit as you move through the finer grits.
And jumping from 150 to 400 is skipping a few grits.
Yeah, it's jumping 180, 220, and 320.
Yeah.
Also, before you start to flatten your back, you should test it on on your 8,000 grit stone and see what that 8,000 grit stone does. Because it'll polish a high spot really quickly. Mm-hmm. And then, so if you see a high spot, then you know you got to have to start pretty coarse. But if it's polishing more or less the whole thing evenly, but there's going to be some low spots just from grinding and so forth, then you can start at a higher grit. Yeah. You know, so always test the back out on before you jump in. 150 seems, you could probably start at 220. Although when I'm grinding bevels, like Dina Pachowski teaches this on granite with sandpaper, they'd use 150, 220, and 400 to grind bevels. And that's very effective.
And Deneb, for background, for those who don't know, Deneb is an employee of Lee Nielsen. He's one of their tool experts.
Yes. Yeah.
But he's also written sharpening articles for us.
That's right. Get sharp fast.
With Dana Pachowski.
True. And one other, when Matt was talking about, giving that first flattening on a fine grit stone, I do that, but I use the aid of a Sharpie on the back so I can see where material is being removed. It's another, today's my crutch day.
Yes.
It's another crutch.
Up to 3.
You're just a regular invalid in the shop.
Bada bing. Hey, I still have 10 fingers. So,
but you started with 12.
No, I have 12 toes. But let's move on to some more fun stuff. We have a special guest waiting in the wings, our contributing editor, Garrett. Contributing editor, Garrett Hack. Hi, Garrett.
Hello, Tom.
It's Tom. With me is Matt.
Hey, Garrett.
And our new web producer, Ben Strano, who I don't think you've met him yet.
No. Hey, Garrett.
So, hi, Ben.
So, a lot of our audience knows you, but I figure for those who don't, maybe you can give us a little bit of a perspective on how you got started in woodworking. I know you went to Princeton and studied architecture, right?
Right, and engineering.
And how did that, at what point, you went to college for that. When did you start woodworking, and when did you realize that it was a good career option for you?
Well, let me back up and say that I took it in high school, and that was really instrumental in sort of going forward, because I was really encouraged by what I was doing there. We had great hand tools and had the opportunity to be in the shop and that kind of thing. I would say the Princeton experience of civil engineering and architecture just got me excited about designing and making things. But it wasn't until I moved back to New Hampshire, that's where I was living at the time, that I started doing woodworking. And I was first working on some renovation type things of some big buildings, barns mostly. Mm-hmm. And then I segued into doing more things inside those buildings, and then finally just doing furniture. So it was around 1976 or whatever. I said, this is what I want to do, and just kept on that path.
Awesome. So what was your first article for Fine Woodworking?
I think it was somewhere around late 80s. Vinnie Lawrence saw some pieces of mine at what turned out to be a very important show in Stowe, Vermont. I moved it over to Vermont in the late 70s, and to where I still am today on Abundance Farm. And he saw these pieces, and he said, would you consider writing about them? And I didn't really consider myself a writer at all, but I thought I'd give it a try, and it ended up being the cover shot, and so it was pretty hard not to get hooked.
Yeah.
What was it on? Was there?
It was on the little side table, the shaker side table, with 5 drawers. Sort of a little bit of an not asymmetric, but a little different arrangement than the shakers would have done. 3/2, and little turned legs, and it was a piece that showed up in the design book and showed up on even some books that Taunton still publishes on tables and that kind of thing.
Is this the one that it's flame birch with pear drawer fronts?
It's pear drawer fronts, but it's curly maple, mostly bird's eye and curly maple. Just very rectilinear, not any curves or anything like that. Yeah. The next evolution of that design was a curved front. but not that one.
That was the article. It's called Strong Light Construction.
Yes.
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 Definitely.
Yeah.
And you, from that article, it's funny how you developed a long-term relationship and friendship with Vinny from that start. It's
definitely. And I still I saw him last fall out in the West. Yeah, I feel like I've made a relationship with just about every editor that's gone through Fine Woodworking because I'm not too hard to get to, and you've often sent them up here to get kind of trained in quotes.
Yeah.
Break them in a little bit.
Yeah, it's fun.
So, your style has evolved over the years, and, you really kind of created this hybrid of federal and shaker elements in your pieces, and you've even moved beyond that. Can you talk a little bit about how your design aesthetic has evolved over the past, 15 or 20 years to where you are today?
Okay. Well, you're right. I did start out being much more inspired by shaker stuff and certainly federal stuff. The thing about the federal stuff that inspired me was the inlays, the incredible decorative details that they were exploring back then. So they were sort of New England styles. It was not easy it was easy to get caught up in it because I live near a shaker village, and there's certainly several others around. I could see original things, but it didn't. It sort of I wouldn't say it phased it out entirely, but I'm moving beyond it lately. I would say the last 10 or 12 years. My wife would say it's her influence, but it's playing with curves much more than I was. I was always working with curves and chairs and bow front things and that kind of thing. But this is moving much more towards asymmetry and coopering to create some of these curves, like boat-like forms, you might say, port and starboard, the pair of cabinets, and Baba Vienna, the tall cabinet.
Yeah.
So it's a question of just kind of playing with the curves and what's possible. And I think it's always a situation that when you do something, your information is sort of additive, your experience is additive, and you say, oh, well, I can go in that direction, and before you know it, you're doing that. So I'm still playing with the decorative stuff, even discovering more details all the time, playing much more with abalone and metals and different things like that, as well as just pushing the forms. And the piece I'm working on right now is really pushing it the farthest I've ever pushed it.
Yeah, that's an amazing piece. I wish we had a snapshot of it because the mock-up that I saw, I guess I was there last year that I saw it. It's quite an undertaking you've got there.
Yeah.
Well, it is an amazing undertaking. It's a commission that the client came to me and said, go for it. Go as far as you want and push it. And we don't really care about what you make, and really we don't even care about owning it right away because it was, to be honest with you, over 3 years of sort of thinking about it. I was a little bit like a deer in the headlights for a long time.
Yeah.
And finally I settled on this sort of a modest cabinet height, 50 inches high, about 26, 7 inches wide, and it flares out at the bottom, and the surface is coopered, so it's staves. They splay out at the bottom, so it's wider at the bottom, and this is filled with all sorts of fun drawers and secret compartments and sliding panels, and it's really throwing everything that I've ever tried to do or have done into one piece that explores all these different kinds of fun trick details, you might say.
When you're designing for a customer, I know this is sort of an odd request. It's atypical, I would think, but when you're designing, do you put a priority on functionality first? How do you go about satisfying what the client is looking for?
Well, functionality is definitely high up there for me. I don't want to build something that is just a piece of sculpture, although this has got some sculptural aspects to it. No, this is very different. But in general, like if I'm designing a desk for somebody or a chest of drawers or whatever, I definitely go back to how do they interact with this piece, where would they store things, how tall are they, how far can they reach with their arms, whatever it is, what do they need for this to work. And but then the aesthetic overlay on top of that, or maybe the aesthetic overlay is a parallel theme that I'm working with. It's not one doesn't dominate the other, but they're definitely working together. And I would say that as a designer and having a long experience with making things, I can weed out ideas pretty quickly and say, you know what, that's a nice idea, but that's so incredibly complex for the very small aesthetic benefit. Let's think about something else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they go hand in hand, and I would say that I'm not building pieces that are just meant to sit there and be pretty. I want people to use them, and they have woods that are made out of wood made out of woods that can be used, or finishes and details or whatever that are will hopefully last for a very long time.
Now, do you still invite woodworkers to your shop? Are you still doing the mentoring program?
I'm not doing a formal mentoring program right now, but I hope to start it up again this coming winter. I took a year off, or 2 years off. I still have a weekend class that I do with some men that come to my shop and watch me build a piece, or we build a piece together. But the mentoring thing is something that I'm still involved in. I still help younger makers that come one-off to me, but I don't have a formal program right now. It's just I feel like I've been teaching so much and traveling so much that I said this winter I really want to concentrate on my work, and I cut back on it.
So you're still doing a lot of teaching. Do you still like it, or is the idea of traveling kind of wearing you down? I know you've been to Europe, you've been to Japan, you've been to Australia. Do you still like the teaching and the travel, or is it something that as you're getting older that you're getting maybe tired of, or want to do something different?
Well, the travel can be fun, but most of the really good trips, my wife comes, so we have a lot of fun with part of that. We've been going to Europe every year for about a month. This is my 8th year, I guess, teaching in Germany. But we make it fun because we, expand it. We travel somewhere else. This year I've been invited to Spain. I'll be spending a week and a half or 2 weeks there teaching and traveling around. And it's really wonderful. I mean, to sort of have that expand all the time. People hear about me and say, hey, would you like to come? I'm not tired of it yet, but I mean, it's hard to balance a farm with all the travel. I have to admit, I've got a milk cow, and she's due any day now. She might actually have a calf today, and that's a lot of responsibility. But we work out, to the fall months of the year. We take the longer trips, and that's when a lot of the farming things have settled down. But I'm not tired of it. I'll continue doing it until I find things do change, or maybe I'm obsolete. Who knows?
Never. Hey,
I hope not.
One of the your going up to your place is a fun trip, because not only is it easy to get to, but just where your shop is and the environment that you're on, it's a real farm. I mean, folks may think that we joke when we call you a gentleman farmer, but it's real life. How did you get into farming? I mean, that's a whole other aspect of your being, so to speak.
Yeah.
So what drew you to that, and what made you want to kind of, I mean, you don't use modern farming equipment. You still use a plow horse. A lot of it's a lot of handwork, so to speak, for your farming. So what drew you to it?
Well, when I grew up, we had an orchard, and we always grew a big garden, and I had 5 siblings, so we were I was always working on that with my father. So I guess it becomes, I wouldn't say recreation so much, because a lot of it's hard work, but it's also a continuity. I love the idea of the seasonal aspect of what I'm doing, and I love the idea of growing high-quality food, and it's really amazing to me that all my kids have come back and said, we have 5 kids, how incredible their upbringing was in terms of what they ate, and so that's really pleasing to have them say that. It's evolving all the time. I'm doing things that I enjoy doing. Like this year so far, I've got my oats planted, and they're all up. They're about 4 or 5 inches high, and I'm just getting a plot of land ready to plant corn. And that's, yes, you're right, working with my workhorse Jazz. It's tedious to some degree, running a disc harrow over it and again. But there's so many rewards, cutting my own wood in the winter. I love working in the woods, and it's a nice complement to sort of the micro work of furniture making. It's more the macro, and it just keeps me healthy, and it's something my partner supports me and my wife supports me in.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, like I said, when you go up to your place, we know that the photo shoot's going to end at a certain time because you have to go take care of the animals. But there's also that nice, I think Matt has done it, where we kind of walk through the farm, and you go through the woods, and we kind of see where you've got all your wood stockpiled, all that fun stuff. So it is an interesting.
Sometimes it feels a little overwhelming, but It'll change. I'm turning 64 this year, and I bet I'm not going to continue doing it another decade, but maybe I will. Maybe I'll do it another 20 years. Who knows?
Well, we hope so. Hey, one more final question. I know this is going to be a short one, but we do a segment periodically, and we did it today. It's our all-time favorite tool of all time for this week. And I was wondering if you had a tool that you wanted to chat about that is your favorite right now.
Well, I'm lucky. I have a lot of really beautiful tools. That's part of the reason that I love woodworking, I have to say. But I would say that my most important go-to tool today is when I travel with in Europe, and it's like one of the only tools I bring like this is a 62 low-angle jack plane. I've got one by Lee Nielsen, and I have a smoothing blade for it and a straight blade for it, and that plane never fails to impress me with how it can cut incredible surfaces against the grain and that kind of thing. So I would be lost without it. I love that low-angle cut, and that's the one I would say is the top of my list.
That's awesome.
It's interesting because Ben actually said the same thing, is that he has the Veritas version. And he said that was his tool this week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the low-angle cut is really nice in terms of I would say if you can do it. I mean, I think almost always you can. It's a question of tightening the throat or sharpening it. But I never am disappointed by how it can cut bird's eye maple or road grain mahogany or whatever it is, and just get the most incredible sheen off it. And it's a really light tool for what it is in terms of the length of it is and how wide it is, and it sure gives you a good cut for how little force it takes to push it as well. So all those are positives for me.
Awesome. I thought you were going to talk about that cheap little flush cutting saw that you broke out the last time I was up there.
I actually just got a little package from Japan from a friend with a new Japanese saw.
Well, I'll check it out next time I come up.
Okay, you will. It's got a green handle, lime green handle.
Well, Garrett, thanks for coming on. Garrett, in the recent issues, he's done kind of a boatload of articles. He did a table project. He's did in an issue that is not yet available, but he did an article on his two favorite block planes, or why you need two block planes. Yeah. And he did a wonderful article on how to make and use scratch stocks, which are an important part of your work.
And
definitely.
He also
can't imagine without them. I made a new one this morning for something I'm shaping.
And I by the way, I just came across a pack of the scratch stocks you gave me, so you'll be getting those back in the mail in the next few days.
Great.
Sorry.
Yeah. Send it back with a box.
A box. Oh yeah,
the little tea box.
That's right. Yes, that will be coming back to you.
Everyone's asking about those, Tom. By the way,
well, the time is coming. Anyway, Garrett, thanks for spending some time with us. It's an honor to have you on the masthead, and we look forward to keeping you going in the edit well.
Well, thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. I always like working with you and Matt as well.
Good. What about Ben?
I haven't worked with Ben yet, so I don't know anything about him.
Your time's coming.
He's terrible.
All right, Garrett. Hey, enjoy the spring weather.
Okay, thanks.
All right, take care,
later, Garrett.
Bye.
Well, that was great. Garrett's always fun to work with, and like we chatted, it's a great road trip up to his shop, winter, summer, spring, or fall. It's a wonderful place to visit, and he's a wonderful guy to hang out with. That's going to do it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Tune in again in 2 weeks on May 27th for our next episode. Please spread the word about Shop Talk Live to your woodworking friends and neighbors. You can catch the podcast via iTunes, and while you're there, please give us the all-powerful 5-star rating. You can also stream the podcast on the web at shoptalklive.com or catch us on iHeartRadio. Finally, you can keep up with Fine Woodworking on Instagram and on Facebook, and look for Matt, Mike, Ben, and me on Instagram as well. Thanks for listening, and have fun in the shop.
Do you have his number?
Listen, I don't run the podcast. I'm just on the podcast.
You're the contact.
It's not 320. What is this?
I'm sure I have it in my cell phone.
I think it's 302 758 36.